This is the reMarkable Paper Pro. Now, has it taken paper to the next level? In my first review, the overriding sentiment was that I was torn, and I think I still am. But I'm conscious that I want something different from e-ink to the majority of you. I want to work on e-ink as I do on my personal computer. And therefore I love the all-singing, all-powerful devices like the Tab Ultra C Pro. I've really also loved using the Bigme e-ink monitor that I used to have here set up on the desk. And that's not what reMarkable is sold as. So I'm struggling here because this isn't the e-ink tablet for me. But that doesn't mean that it isn't the e-ink tablet for you. So for me, the only fair way to review this, as far as I can see, is to review it from the point of view of what it's for and what its intended purpose is. And then I'll review it for my own use case. So that's what you're getting here. You're getting two reviews in one, and I hope you enjoy it. And let me know in the comments what you think. So I'm going to start with what it is for. For personal notes. It does personal notes really, really well. And if you're just writing in black and white, then it's obviously brilliant. It's an improvement in no small way over the reMarkable 2. The stylus is brilliant for writing, and you get the benefit of super low latency in black and white. I personally think that it's not as good a handwriting rendition as it was on the previous reMarkable, and with some of its competitors with the Wacom EMR. But when you notice them side by side, you do actually notice the difference in latency between this, the new reMarkable Paper Pro, and the reMarkable 2. But the reMarkable 2 is no slouch either. And certainly, if you didn't have them side by side, you wouldn't be bothered by the latency on the reMarkable 2. Importantly, I feel like my handwriting looks good. It's an accurate rendition of the way my handwriting looks on paper. And it is really good to be able to move things around on the page, to be able to resize things, and reorganize your notes like so. If you want to create to-do lists, or mind maps, or flow diagrams, or anything like that, or if you just want to annotate a PDF, then it's brilliant. I have used the reMarkable Paper Pro, and I will use it just as a piece of paper now for my desk notes, just to keep track of the things that I'm doing, and when I've completed something, then I go ahead and delete them. I'm still working on this one. And this is today, just now. It does come back on really quickly every single time, and it comes back straight back to where you were before you stopped your last session. It's super easy, and that's a frictionless way to use it. But £700 for this just to be essentially just a pad of paper on your desk, that might be quite a hard sell. And when I speak to people about their intended use cases for e-ink, they aren't actually intending for them to replace a computer or an iPad. They're intending it to be their companion next door to their keyboard on their desk. And as I've said many times, if you use a computer or a tablet, but you still use paper for your notes or for any other use, then I strongly recommend you get yourself some type of e-ink tablet, because it's an absolute, well, what's a synonym for game changer for me to put in here? Once you do that, once you replace your notepad with e-ink, you won't go back. It's for personal reading and for markup. So if I go into here, there's a lot of the readings that I did for my leadership project that I did a few years ago. And I started this actually on the reMarkable 1, and it still looks good here on the reMarkable Paper Pro. I do really love the send to reMarkable function from the web. But there is also a third-party plugin, which is called rePub, which also includes images. And it's also really easy to shove PDFs on it. But one of the big problems with it as a reader is that you can only read EPUBs or PDFs on it. All of them, though, can be annotated, and you can zoom in and zoom out to give yourself lots of room for writing. You can also, with two fingers, swipe off to the side to give yourself extra room in the margins. And I will just say, as I've noticed it at this point, there is some really harsh yellow staining there. That's ghosting, which is inherent because of the Gallery 3 e-ink screen. Now that is said to be improved on the update 3.15, but I am still on the 3.14 here because the 3.15 is still in its beta testing mode. But I've read that that is improved. So fingers crossed that's the case. They should just give us some type of gesture to refresh the screen when we notice that harsh yellow staining there. Now you also have the option to receive files from Word or PowerPoint. Now I suppose the idea of this would be if you're the type of person who needs to receive documents and then annotate them and then send them back by email to somebody who would maybe go ahead and make those changes for you. If you're in that kind of leadership position, I think that would work quite well. You can just receive those files, annotate them, and then fire them straight back for someone else to action. But I personally think for most of us in that use case, you'd be better off with something where you could keep those live changes in your Microsoft cloud, for instance, and somebody could carry on working from them and respond to them on one live document. I think with this type of workflow, you're getting into version control when you're sending things backwards and forwards. And that's something that I thought we'd left behind last decade. And version control frequently led to lost data and lost work. Now, that being said, that function does work quite well here. Annotating documents is really pleasant. But if you can imagine, you've received a Word document and you've noticed a typo, and instead of just correcting the typo, you're going to have to ring that and have somebody else go through that document, find it again, and redo that. That's quite frustrating in my opinion. There aren't many alternatives that can do that workflow really, really well though, but perhaps something like an iPad or a really good Android tablet would work quite well. Now, other Android tablets do tend to be a little bit laggy in third-party apps like Microsoft Cloud, but I do personally find that that's a trade-off I'm willing to accept for that kind of connectedness. Let's look at some color content now. The whole thing does look really quite good. So it is very useful to read those documents in color, but it's telling about the way this screen works because they've had to add in this extra mode called contrast mode. Now it's on automatic and I imagine it's turned it on. But when that's not on, it is quite difficult to read the text. So without that on, the text can look quite thin and low contrast, and it's quite frustrating to have to be changing that all the time. With it on, the images look really bad. But that is not just the Gallery 3, that is the world of e-ink that you're getting into there, where you do have to manage that screen. If you want the benefits of e-ink, you're going to have to live with the trade-offs of e-ink too. So here with it off, it's a bit more difficult to read. But the images do look a fair bit better. This is with the contrast off. This is with the contrast filter on. It's quite dark now, you see. I just find, although they've added an automatic mode, most of us will be happy with that on most of the time. I find that there are enough times where I'm having to switch that myself that it's a bit annoying. Now this is because the way the Gallery Free screen works, it doesn't render black and white quite as well as other forms of e-ink. So if you know it's just black and white reading that you need, I do still think you should look elsewhere and get a pure black and white screen. However, if you do have color on your PDFs and you need to distinguish between the colors on different diagrams, then this screen is the best you can get right now. Just with a slight warning that if you do need to zoom in and zoom out and resize that document regularly, then you're going to get into those issues I talked about with the ghosting. The size of this screen isn't quite the size of a full A4 screen, but it is good enough that you'll read most professional documents pretty comfortably. And once you fix your zoom level, then it does stay as you go through the rest of the document. The reMarkable Paper Pro does feel like it is the right size. For focused writing sessions, I have really enjoyed this. I think the workflow is quite compelling to lay out some notes by hand, maybe some chapter headings, and then go ahead and convert the whole thing to text, and then rotate the device, lift up the keyboard, which is, I'm sure I've said it before, but the best keyboard design across all tablets. And now I can go ahead and edit the text. It did get all of my text accurately that time, but now I can add in. And this is a full-size keyboard from left to right, with generally some well-considered keyboard shortcuts. For instance, for quick formatting like so. And it's brilliant, but it does seem to be absolutely hamstrung by this crippled writing software. And I think reMarkable needs to work with maybe Microsoft, or at least give you a sort of version of Word that would work on this tablet to give you the type of tools that you expect on a modern word processor. There's no spell check here. There's no grammar. You can't choose your fonts. And if they could work with Microsoft to give you a version of this that actually synced with your OneDrive, then that would make the reMarkable Paper Pro an incredibly powerful word processor. It is, though, a really pleasant place to type, and certainly typing on e-ink is a good time. I think if you're a confident typist, and I think if you're a confident speller, I think that you'll be totally delighted here. And I think that that'd be absolutely brilliant if you're used to using modifiers to change your formatting and keyboard shortcuts. Then you'll build up blocks of text quite quickly. And importantly, when I type on this, I'm only thinking about the skill of creating the piece of text. And that's what I mean by it's good for focused writing sessions. I think it's good that they've managed to keep things simple, but I do think they should add those tools. I quite like, for instance, the refine mode that you can go into, where now the marker is allowing you to select bits of text and make changes. But again, there's so much they could add to this without making it distracting, in my opinion. And I like the fact that you can then add your notes. So to continue that workflow, you might read it through with the marker in hand in portrait mode, and either make a few quick changes with the on-screen keyboard, or ring things, or cross things out and make edits. And at that point, you can go ahead and recognize this text and then copy and paste that back in. But unfortunately, every time you do a text recognition, it is starting a whole new page. So it isn't going back and re-editing the text that you have first recognized. It is one of the nicest accessories that's designed for any tablet at all. The way that it folds away, it just means that your hands don't have to sit on the keys whilst you're holding the tablet in its case. And honestly, they've done quite well this time to not make it a massive increase in the width of the tablet over the ordinary book folio. The book folio itself, though, is the choice if you're not confident you'll be using that to type on quite regularly, because it does just keep things that little bit thinner and lighter, importantly. But reviewers, myself included, have made quite a bit of a deal out of this little folded flap that goes in around and keeps your pen in place so it doesn't fall off in your bag. But then when you do want to write on it, it goes into this little indented space where now the tablet can lie flat without wobbling on the table whilst you write. That's the type of consideration you get from reMarkable. The design is superfluous. It's also clever the way they've made sure that those keys can't actually be pressed whilst it's in this tablet mode. They've actually added pogo pins here to connect to the device, and then two sets of pogo pins which are hidden away under here, which are only connected when the device is snapped up into the keyboard position. Expect that to be copied by a lot of companies in the future. It's for ideation and development of those ideas. And for a creative person, this is really brilliant. I did really like one of the things they said in the launch video was that paper doesn't have a workflow. And I'll talk a little bit more about workflows later on, but in fact, if you're looking for something that's just about as free and easy as working on a piece of paper, then yeah, this could do it. I tell my students at school that this thing, the pen, is the most sophisticated thinking tool that man has ever devised. And it's true. Thinking with a pen in your hand is so very natural to us. And I don't think it's something that mankind has had to be taught. They haven't had to be shown how to make marks in places, to keep track of counting, or developed ideas and communicated them between us by making marks in the mud, for instance. It's still the case if we want to share an idea, we're often compelled to draw out a little diagram or a picture of what we're talking about. So there is a convincing case for this to be made that this is a development of paper, and now it's giving you those options to add those splashes of color across your notes. Or should I say those flashes of color? And it should just give your notes a little bit more life. And I think that our brains do work in this way when we're remembering what we've written down. Oh, that was written in the green section of my notes. It's a useful tool for our memory. I'll just pause for a moment. There's been a couple of comments. Yeah, it's CMYW instead of a CMYK, technically, absolutely. So the way the screen works is that the white is the only reflective pigment, and the black is just made by having the three not reflective colors to the surface. And black is an absence of light, so it doesn't reflect. So therefore it looks black. Well, it looks dark blue. Yeah, spotted this one. I imagine as they've got such a lot of people moaning about the LED brightness, they'll probably change that in a future update. But right now, yeah, you've got Khaled's great video where you can go ahead and he shows you how to do that. Still a bit more of what is it for then. It's a pleasant place to sketch out the flesh of our ideas. And people spend a lot of money on attractive pens. They spend a lot of money on beautiful stationery, beautiful notebooks and folios. It's nice to work on nice things, and this is pleasant tech to use. There is a reason why Apple products, for instance, they've often got lower specifications, but higher price points. And I think this is a beautifully machined tablet. And aesthetic tech does matter. It's not just about it being attractive and desirable to make you want to buy the thing, but it's about it being attractive and desirable to make you want to continue using it, so that people fall in love with these devices. And judging by the comments on my videos, people certainly do. I'm kind of expecting the title of this video to be something along the lines of, I really want to love this, because it's beautiful. You put it in this or the book folio, and my word, does it not look like a book? I mean, if you've grown up with nice stationery, this is the natural progression of that, isn't it? But then because it is digital paper, you do have a whole lot of different advantages. You can share your ideas more quickly. You can duplicate things. You can make your own templates, albeit by a bit of a workaround with PDF. You can share the screen in a meeting, for instance. And the writing tools, the brushes and pens that you have to choose from are some of the best that you've got in any tablet, including all LCD and OLED tablets as well. And the nice thing is that you do get those exact same writing tools wherever you are in the tablet. So in PDF or EPUB, the user interface looks exactly the same. And so there's some truth to the way that they were originally marketed, that reMarkable has been designed to get out of your way so that you can just use it to think. And little design touches like this. So the folios will wake the device when they're opened, just as you would expect. But here's a nice touch. The device will also be woken from its sleep by just lifting the pen off its magnetic dock on the side. They really are well designed. And I personally would love to see what a whole range of different reMarkable products would look like. What would they do with the phone, for example? Or what would a reMarkable laptop look like? reMarkables are places for blue sky thinking. But I think you need to know that that's what you really need it for. I think you need to be the type of person who needs something expensive to do that blue sky thinking on. But if you do, if you decide that that is for you, then it will reward you. And it isn't the only e-ink tablet which is great for blue sky thinking on. I think this is how you know if this is for you or if it's not. If you're already the type of person that uses paper to begin thinking through an idea and then develops that idea elsewhere, then this is probably for you. So consider this. If you've been asked to write an article, what do you do first? Do you get out pad and paper and do you sit with a cup of coffee on your lovely comfortable chair and start writing bullet points or fleshing out ideas and structures? And then once you've got that framework down by hand, after that, you move on to a keyboard and begin typing up your ideas, then yes, I think this is for you. You can use that excellent handwriting to text function, and then you can use the amazing keyboard to type away on. And of course, you can go ahead and continue to write your article on here. You can add diagrams and flowcharts, whatever your ideas are. You can continue to annotate with the pen as well. You can make lists and tick things off and cross them out with big red pens until you've got that finished article, which you can export and just maybe tidy up and format on a computer. If that workflow appeals to you, then the reMarkable Paper Pro is for you. However, if you're the type of person that when you start to write that article, you tend to want to get something down as quickly as possible, and you tend to want to move it as quickly as possible to the finished thing. Perhaps you want to kind of type it all out in one draft, sort of linearly, and then work on it and edit it and develop it within the word processing software. Then I think this is the wrong thing for you. For instance, more often than anything now, what I'm using is voice recognition software, either in Word or with an AI app on my phone or a whole other device. And what I'll do is I'll write my first draft, or I'll get out a lot of ideas verbally, and then I'll work on that in the cloud on the computer and really polish that into the final article. So lots of people will say that this doesn't appeal to them, or this whole type of tablet doesn't appeal to them because they're simply not note takers. So if that's you, if you start working straight away with the keyboard, then I don't think you need a reMarkable Paper Pro. This is one for the stationery lovers. This is one for the cups of tea and the blank set of notes. It's not one for the 22 tabs open at once, pulling in research from all different places across multiple monitors. This is one for the quiet thinkers rather than the power users. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why I'm torn, because I think I'm both of those people. Thanks, Alex, appreciate you. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Alex, yeah. A lot of the confusion is that first two levels are just useless, yeah. So now onto what it is not for. It's jarring. You see, for me, distraction-free means that I get to stay in my flow. And very much what I mean by flow is, well, it's actually a technical term. You should certainly read Flow or The Secret to Finding Happiness. You will absolutely wolf down that book. And what you'll find is that you'll realize why you love doing certain things and why some things are like, oh wow, yeah, I could do that forever. Or I feel like I could just exist in that activity until something pulls me out of it. That's what flow is. It's where you lose that whole sense of time and you feel connected to something greater than you. reMarkable have been marketing their tablets as a distraction-free experience since they began. And on the one hand, that's perfectly believable. The reMarkable 2, the reMarkable 1, they were truly distraction-free devices. And honestly, now even fast forward 7 years from that launch, and the device we have today is, well, I've spoken a fair bit about how focused you can be with that. But I've also spoken a fair bit about that flashing. And you'll see in the video, I certainly won't try and edit out any of the flashes sort of on purpose. And hopefully you can get an idea from this as to whether you would manage with this or be distracted by this or be totally put off. I'm getting about equal numbers of people, probably slightly more people who are saying they're happy with the flashing and they don't find it a problem than I do who say they can't manage the flashing and they've returned the device because of that. The nice thing is with reMarkable that you can go ahead and try their device for 100 days and just return it if you haven't got along with that. And it is distracting even when you're making notes in color. So you should expect that generally you'll be writing in black and white and you'll just be adding accents and highlights with the different colors. Because that is quite a lot. And just every time you see it do that, it catches your eye and it can take you out of that flow. I don't know why reMarkable can't give us some pens which are just the type of color, that color that it makes before it flashes. That color is a good enough blue just to allow me to add a little bit of blue to my notes. Just give me that color without it needing to flash so that at least I can add some color and not be distracted by the flash every time. And if you're absolutely sure that that will bother you, then just stick with black and white. Possibly if you think this flashing will bother you, then go ahead and wait, because I'm sure that reMarkable 3 will be along and I'd expect them to bring that with a Wacom EMR stylus and a purely black and white screen. It would be an easy thing for them to do to give you that option between color, but with the flashing as a trade-off, and a black and white which will work just as well as all reMarkables have done in the past. So surely there must be some benefits of color if they've bothered to include that in their new flagship tablet. I think that there is a benefit of being able to color coordinate your highlights, for instance, color mark up your notes for better retention and memory. Certainly there's a place for reading things like comic books which are designed to be in full color. I'm sort of slowly working my way through this one at the moment. I'm guessing it's defaulted to, yeah, it has. That's a really pleasant experience of color on there. That's cleaned up really nicely. There's very little ghosting or anything at all. That is really clean and crisp color. It's very attractive. This is the best imitation of printed color on paper. So if you're not put off by that flash, then you can get the very best experience of color on ePaper that you can buy today with the reMarkable Paper Pro. It's a shame that they've hamstrung it again by not allowing you access to things like comic book formats or any other type of ebook. And I've also had some comments that perhaps my content covering the reMarkable Paper Pro should come with a flashing images warning. I feel that some reviewers, in their sort of desire to love this tablet and give it a positive review, because it is a really compelling device, have overlooked some of the issues that are inherent with Gallery 3. That yellow staining, for instance, that slow refresh rate with that distracting flash. Sure, this is better than the previous generation of Gallery 3 that we've only really seen in the Bigme Gallery. That was slower to do that refresh, and just generally the whole user interface was a full Android user interface, so needed to flash more often because it was refreshing elements of the screen more often. The reMarkable 3 has improved by using the newest e-ink controller. It's kind of like comparing T2000 versus Arnie. You're looking at 0.1 seconds to refresh the entire screen rather than about a third of a second. But the flash is still there, and it's jarring when you're navigating through the menus. It is jarring. And importantly for me, that yellow staining is still there, and that is just plain ugly. There is no way to remove that entirely by software updates. There is no way to remove the flash by software updates. That's just the way their technology works. So you need to know that you're going to be using this for pretty much static or very slowly changing content. And luckily, that's all it can do. But look, just for page turns, you don't get too much of an issue with that. So if this is really more about writing in black and white just with a few accents of color, then the lack of having true blacks on it make it imperfect for doing that job. Black is not jarring though, and it doesn't need an entire flash to render. So I think the whole device is saved by that. If the black needed to flash, then this would be an impossible device to recommend. But as it is, you've got the lowest latency in black and white writing that you can get on any e-ink tablet. And what is more, you've got this incredible writing experience with the incredible typefolio. But then when you want to publish that, instead of just having the joy of pressing publish or export, you have to go ahead and export that either as a PDF, or which has got that destructive formatting, or you've got to copy and paste that out of the cloud service. And that's another step. That's another jarring step. That's another time where you're wrenched out of that flow. And then if you have made typos or grammatical errors, you've got this whole heap of text where you'll have to go through and make those corrections afterwards. Rather than, as is most of our workflows now, either allowing the computer to auto-correct those or correcting them as we go. At least they have fixed the issue though, where by exporting out of the reMarkable app on your phone, you had these funny symbols after every line and you had to go through and actually delete those. It's those things where it might be a distraction-free device because you can't do very much, but it doesn't lend to flow because you have to go ahead and work on an entirely different device. You have to literally be removed from that workflow. It's not just distraction-free though, that's totally archaic. So when I do a bit of writing with the reMarkable, I rarely do anything with it because I know that I'm looking forward to a period of time where I'll have to be exporting it or copying and pasting it and then doing that simple grammar editing. And let's face it, that's a pain in the backside right now. It's not distraction-free, it's a giant chasm in your streamlined 21st century workflow. You're used to all of those quality of life things from your software, and you don't get them on here. So I'm sorry, it's time to update that software now. So, what about the conclusion? For what it's worth, I think they might as well have just brought a Carta 1300 black and white, ultra slim and ultra light device to market. But I think that they'll do that anyway. And I do think that it's been a brave decision to go for this color device. I think some of their customers will be off-put by that flashing and they'll either return it or they will look elsewhere entirely. That being said, I think it's a risk that reMarkable can afford to take. And I think that when they come back with the reMarkable 3, I think we'll all be just as excited for that launch as we have been for this one. Other people I've shown this to in real life, they either say, I love the color, or they just can't see the point in the color. They say they don't mind the flash, or they say they couldn't stand the flash. And many of them say, well, if I can just write in black and white mainly, why not stick with either the device that I've got, the reMarkable 2, or one of the other e-ink tablets. And some of them also say, well, unfortunately, this is too big even for my desk, let alone my handbag. But for what it's for things like your personal notes, for meetings, I do think the reMarkable have made a truly exceptional device here. We're still asking ourselves that same question: what will reMarkable 3 look like? Because this ain't it. Yeah. I don't know how cheap they could make it though. Like probably £400 as a base cost for the device, and then accessories on top. I'm really worried though. I'm really worried the reMarkable 3 won't have the EMR stylus. They've always pushed that sort of low latency thing. And I think just for their handwritten notes, they're probably right that most people won't know the difference between the EMR and the whatever it is pen. And I think that will mean that they will probably end up sticking with that. And yeah, I'm not so happy about that, to be honest.